Hey all, Bree from the No Guilt Mom podcast, and I have got a gift for you this holiday season. If you love the No Guilt Mom podcast, and I mean love the No Guilt Mom podcast, then tell us about it. Leave us a review, and you can be entered to win a No Guilt Mom gift card. All you have to do is leave a review, take a screenshot, and then simply go to noguiltmom.com/review to enter our giveaway for a free No Guilt Mom gift card, simply for telling us what you think about the podcast. It is amazing. But don't delay. Get right on this, as we're going to be giving away that No Guilt Mom gift card on December 21st. So get right on over and visit noguiltmom.com/review.
Welcome to the No Guilt Mom podcast. I am your host, Joanne Crone, joined here by my co-host, Bree Tucker.
Why, hello, Betty. How are you? I added a little visual effect for people watching us on YouTube.
If you're watching us on YouTube, yeah, you could see Bree's like fancy like jazz hands. All that. That's like my only dance move. Jazz hands and everything that I watch Cody Riggs video on Peloton when I'm like on the bike. He does some dance moves and they're like again, you gotta go listen to us you gotta go see us on YouTube for my fantastic dance moves.
You already have more dance moves than me. Mine are all like just imitating John Travolta and Saturday Night Fever.
Today we have a fantastic interview that like I was so excited when he said yes, because I've been following him on Instagram for such a long time and I love his videos and how insightful they are and how entertaining they are. It is Mr. Chazz. We have Mr. Chazz, Bree.
It was pretty amazing. I remember when you first came to me with, I want to have Mr. Chazz. And I'm like, okay, I hadn't looked him up yet. I hadn't come across him yet on social media. But as soon as I did, I'm like, yeah, I can see why. He 100% is like, he's our guy. He's like right on to everything that we've been talking about. And of course I love him because he's an early childhood. He talks a lot about that. And that's my jam. So.
And he's one of the few men in the field for respectful parenting and conscious parenting and just all of this mind shift from needing to punish our kids to really establishing this great relationship with our kids and regulating our own emotions. And if you have not checked out Mr. Chazz's Instagram, you need to do so. He is the founder of Mr. Chazz's Leadership Parenting and Teaching podcast. He's a parent coach. He's a speaker. He's a teacher in the classroom and he's a content creator. He's a very busy man. He helps adults. He's so busy. He helps adults understand and guide children, breaking generational cycles, all while using conscious discipline techniques. And we hope you enjoy our interview with Mr. Chazz.
You want mom life to be easier. That's our goal too. Our mission is to raise more self-sufficient and independent kids, and we're going to have fun doing it. We're going to help you delegate and step back. Each episode will tackle strategies for positive discipline, making our kids more responsible and making our lives better in the process. Welcome to the No Guilt Mom podcast.
So what should we call you? Should we call you Mr. Chazz or Chazz?
Mr. Chazz, because that's where I am everywhere on social media. So Mr. Chazz, yeah.
So what capacity do you do in the school?
Here's a super condensed version of just kind of got here. Started off as a Montessori teacher, then became an educational specialist where my job was to support teachers in different schools. Then the pandemic happened. I started to share the lessons that I'd learned on my journey online. I was doing that for a while and resonated with a lot of people. But I just go back in the classroom just so I can continue practicing what I preach. And I actually work in an early childhood center.
Oh man. My background's early childhood, so that's my sweet spot too. I did a lot of early childhood and preschool.
I was a fifth grade teacher for many, many years before I started No Guilt Mom. And like, I always give props to all of the early childhood people. And like early childhood was always like, I don't know how you deal with the big kids. And I think it's like such not different skill sets. They're kind of the same, but it's just, I look at early childhood where you guys have more emotions that you need to instruct on. Not saying that the fifth graders don't,
right?
But it's more of the focus, I think, in early childhood versus what the school districts push in the fifth grade.
Yeah.
And what I love through this work is that emotions are just so important for everybody. Like they're so important for everybody. And the more understanding we have, the better, which is why I was so drawn to you and to your work. And I first saw you on Instagram, particularly the video that you had explaining a preschooler's reaction to I can't remember the issue, but it was you having a tantrum and saying like what was on the inner like what would the inner monologue of the preschooler was, and just explaining that so well. And the first thing I'm really curious about is why did you initially start your Instagram? Like what led you to that?
Well, I started off as a Montessori teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first started, I really just kind of got thrown in the classroom. I watched like a 3-hour play video. They gave me some HR, a binder to look through and read. And I pretty much went in the classroom and they were just like, it's kind of like a sink or swim kind of thing. I was like, you got it, right? And I'm like, I don't think I got it, but I'm here. I'm the body in the classroom for ratio purposes. And I really very quickly saw how important the job was of raising the next generation of humans. But I realized also very quickly, I had no idea how to really do that in a healthy, helpful way. I would go into, conflicts that, children were having amongst each other. Maybe they were starting to yell at each other. By the time it was done, they're fighting each other. I'm like, I don't know if I'm helping. I don't know how to help. So I struggled a lot when I first started. And I kind of went into how I was raised and how really a lot of people that were around me were raised in kind of the punishment, threat, fear, shame-based approaches. And I remember reflecting on just how that wasn't the teacher that I wanted to be or the person that I wanted to be, because I was an ADHD kid growing up, still am one. And so all those kind of tactics were used on me a lot. And I remember how ineffective they were and how they left me feeling. And I decided that's not who I wanted to be, which was really the first step. And I feel like I talked to a lot of people and it's like, that's the first step. And like everyone's like, hey, like, I don't want to do this. When that happens, you celebrate. Yeah. Like, all right, we're starting to get to a place of awareness and not just unconsciously passing on what was done to us. Then comes another hard part of, all right, so what do I do instead? And that's a journey of figuring out what to do instead. And I went down rabbit holes of learning, of reading, of listening to podcasts, and had really gone on a journey of improvement and growth. And over time, other people start to recognize what I was doing and how I was able to work with the kids that were not successful in other classrooms, but they were successful in mine. And that's when I really started to focus on wanting to help other people and share kind of the lessons that I had learned, because teachers were coming up to me just kind of casually in the break room and asking me questions like, okay, I'm having a problem with this kid and this is happening and how would you deal with it? I started to kind of casually offer advice in the break room. They started to come back and say like, wow, this has like been so impactful for me. And this child, it's changed both of our days. And that's when I started to kind of get the idea, okay, well, how do I spread this further? And that really turned into me becoming an educational specialist. And really my job was to support teachers and go to different schools. But then wanting to do it on social media. And when the pandemic happened, that was the real big push for me to like, okay, let me like really start focusing on putting this, like creating content that is relatively short. And I'm really trying to focus 1 minute or less. But at the end of it, you feel like you've gotten a nugget of information. Your perspective has shifted, expanded, or you have an extra tool to use and you can apply right then. And especially really wanting to help parents, because obviously the beginning of the pandemic was a new challenge for all of the parents. And I was really doing a lot of listening to, parents being the 24/7 everything for children and really making a lot of the same mistakes that I made in that time where I was kind of thrown in the classroom and sink or swim, which I'm sure that's how a lot of parents felt in the pandemic.
It is totally. And like so many things you've said, like I could see like that was my journey as a teacher as well. You're put in, you have your hour-long classroom management class that you were given in your teacher education program, and they're like, here you go. And you don't want to come in being that person who is yelling at their class or demeaning their kids. And it's so interesting. I love hearing your journey that other teachers were coming up to you, because I don't think I got enough time in the classroom kind of figuring out a different way to approach kids, the more emotionally based way to approach kids. Although I think I discovered through that I was like, I was going toward that direction.
Yeah.
But so many people think it's the kids. And I think that is the hardest thing to get across to people, is that somehow like you are trying to change the kids' behavior instead of trying to change your own reaction to the kids' behavior. And it's in your own reaction that's where the magic happens. And I love that you give parents those little nuggets. What have you seen in terms of really trying to get adults to realize that it's not the kids, that it's really the adults' interaction?
So we have these mental models that we have kind of most of us have kind of grown up with. And of course, in different cultures, there's different like variations, but I even have to remind myself as a person who preaches this stuff all the time of the different ways that we can see things. And because the way that we were raised is conditioned within us. It's in our body. So it's not even just of like, I'm going to tell you a perspective shift, but it really takes the practice. It's not just knowing it. There's a phrase that when you know better, you do better. I think that's only part of the story. Knowing better is the beginning part of learning how the practice of doing. And I say it's the practice of doing better because it is an ongoing practice.
This message is sponsored by Greenlight. It is so hard to raise kids who know how to manage money. Bree, right now, my kids are all about earning money for presents. My daughter wants to get presents for all of her friends, and my son is doing a Secret Santa with his friends.
Oh, I hear you. And if you're looking to raise kids that are financially responsible, we have got a lifesaver recommendation for you that you need to check out. It is Greenlight. Greenlight is a debit card and money app made for families that gives kids and teens an easy and fun way to gain financial literacy, all while giving parents peace of mind.
You can send instant money transfers, automate allowance, and even keep an eye on kids' spending with real-time notifications. Meanwhile, your kids can begin their journey towards financial autonomy by learning how to save, invest, and spend wisely.
So sign up for Greenlight today and get your first month free when you go to greenlight.com/NGM.
That's greenlight.com/NGM to try Greenlight for free. Greenlight.com/NGM.
We're hitting that time of year where my brain gets so overloaded in December that I look for anything to make life easier. And I have to say, Bree, that Green Chef is one of those services.
Yes, Green Chef is there to take away the dreaded, oh my goodness, what are we going to eat for dinner tonight? You can eat clean all holiday long with over 80 weekly meal options each week, featuring things like quick and easy, protein-packed, calorie-smart, or my personal favorite, the keto options.
And you don't have to lose track of healthy eating habits during the holidays, because every Green Chef customer gets a free session with one of their registered dietitians who can walk you through how to make clean eating work for you, which is very cool.
And I have to say that I have been loving their recipes lately. They put things together I have never thought of. This week we're trying the lemon basil caper pork with sauteed cauliflower, bell peppers, almonds, and feta cheese, my favorite. Their recipes make it so easy to support my wellness goals without skipping on flavor.
For Green Chef's best deal of the year, get $250 off with code NGM250 at greenchef.com/NGM250. That's greenchef.com/NGM250. And don't forget to use that code NGM250 to get $250 off.
Green Chef, the #1 meal kit for eating well.
So here's the paradigm shift. We have a tendency to think that if I'm going to give you two here. One, if a child is not listening to us, and what we're doing is not effective, then what is needed is more force, more control, harsher methods are what is needed to get the child to listen, to impact the child's behavior. instead of thinking that way and using that kind of mental model, instead we want to replace that with, if we're not able to be effective in collaborating and eliciting cooperation with the child, then maybe more information is needed. Maybe there's something that we're not seeing in this situation. Maybe they need connection, or maybe it is a thing that it's a moment that they're having because they're hungry, or maybe it's a skill that is missing that they don't know yet. More information is needed, and it really takes us stepping into curiosity. The other paradigm shift that I want to kind of throw out there is that we believe that to get children to listen to us, to get that cooperation and collaboration, that we have to control them, and controlling them and controlling their behavior is our goal. And what we need to do as a parent, as a teacher, to control this child's behavior. And, what happens if they act like a child and we aren't able to control their behavior, this other human person, this other soul,
Free will.
this other, yeah, right. They really do have free will, as we all do. If we're not able to control them, then that means that there's something wrong with us, that we're a failure as a teacher, as a parent. Now, the paradigm shift we want to replace that is that instead of believing that we can control this other person, instead believing controlling ourselves is possible. And when we do that, when we're able to self-discipline ourselves, when we're able to control ourselves, then our influence over with other people is tremendous. And then we can have great influence with other people if we are able to control ourselves.
It's hard. Yeah.
And these are just paradigm shifts, because you hear that as like, okay, that sounds good. Now, like, I'm in a situation and I'm in survival mode. I'm starting to feel the judgment of other people, and I'm going to go right into my default. And so it's not just under knowing that, okay, I need to control myself in this situation so I can have greater influence with this child. And this is also true with just people in general. You're talking about how you were a leader. And I mean, my podcast is called Mr. Chazz's Leadership Parenting and Teaching Podcast, because all the things I talk about are powerful lessons in all these different areas of parenting, of teaching, and in leadership.
As I was listening to your podcast, you said something so impactful, where it was that sometimes, like, as a teacher, you felt that you were doing discipline strategies because you were trying to impress this other, like a supervisor with the control of the class. And I think that is something that so many teachers feel and so many parents feel, that they do have to control the class. I was just talking with a teacher last night who they're having a lot of behavior issues in their grade level. And he's like, yeah, I don't know what I need to do. I've already like reprimanded them. I've yelled at them. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, what can I say in this moment to have influence over this teacher when I'm not a teacher in the classroom myself, but I do know that these strategies work. So I'm just wondering, how do we talk with teachers that our kids come into contact with when there are issues going on in the classroom, and you're like, hey, like, there might be another way to handle things that you haven't thought of yet?
So first thing is have a relationship, have a connection with whoever you're talking to, because that's going to be your relationship is going to be like the filter in which that conversation is had. And if we don't have a relationship with the person, then it's likely, especially unsolicited advice, is not going to be really taken in or internalized, or really, they may feel judged.
That is what I'm trying to check myself on, Mr. Chazz. All my unsolicited advice out there. Yes.
So really just be aware of your relationship with this person. And if you don't have a relationship and you really do want to help this person in this moment, maybe it's the first time you're meeting them, because sometimes, a lot of times, the situation with me is keep talking to them and in that conversation, try to build a relationship, and really just trying to see them and understand them and empathize with them without giving any kind of advice. And, one of the things that I'll try to do when talking to teachers or parents or anyone about this is I will, in seeing them, I will, in the situation, I have it take me through the scenario from beginning to end, and try to like find a common life experience that we have, or I think that they may have, and try to put themselves in in the shoes of being that person, or and maybe they remember a little bit of what it's like being a child or maybe a teenager, but and maybe not, but a lot of times, like I use a lot of the reference of the workplace because um, we really, and my role as an educational specialist where I was uh, doing a lot of guiding teachers and more in a leadership position than when I was a teacher in the classroom, but also kind of also having to be the teacher in the classroom a lot of times and really be in the classroom. I saw there's so many parallels between our struggles, the struggles that children have and the struggles that us adults have.
Yeah.
And so I try to really talk in a way in like, hey, like, what has that experience been like for you, like just in the workplace? And in early childhood, we have a range of leaders who, some leaders are really good and some leaders have a lot to learn, a lot of opportunities
I was
to
going
learn.
to say they have work to do.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny, like the parallels I'm drawing right now when you're talking, I'm like, of course, like the same way we talk to kids about asking them to explain the situation, take us through it, we should be doing the same with adults
In that relationship too.
in the relationship.
And like,
yeah.
and think specifically about you think I've reprimanded them, I've done this, I've done that.
Yeah.
Imagine in any profession or industry, even your boss talking about
Yeah.
you in that way. Like, I've tried to punish them. I've docked their
Right.
pay. I have, made it so I've made their life harder. I've yelled at them, but nothing is getting them to turn their work in on time, or nothing is getting them to stop making this mistake. What do you think you would need in that moment? Like, what do you think would be helpful for you if you were trying to turn in your lesson plan or that document, or not try to make as many typos, or sending documents to the wrong people, or not knowing how to do a program? And sometimes it's hard for us to really see that and make those parallels because we're so far removed from our own childhood, and we don't realize, like, it's hard for us to remember what it was like being 3 or even being 8 or 10 or 11. And by that time, so many of these mental models of, especially as we kind of get older in the teen years, have been kind of solidified in us. And I also see children use the same mental models that we use with children, they use with each other. So if we operate with the same, that if you're not doing what I want, then I need to force you to do what I want by any means necessary.
Right.
They will do the same thing to each other.
That's true.
And they will just treat themselves the same way.
It's like that I've said this many times before, and I think I learned it during a positive discipline training, but it was something like, where did we get the crazy idea that we need to make people feel bad in order to make them act better? It's the whole point of it. And I think we were all kind of brought up with that too, right? Like that was kind of your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s mantra, right? Like, you better stop. You're disappointing me. You're doing a bad job, and somehow like talking down to people, disciplining them in a negative way that makes them feel smaller, that makes them feel like they don't have the skills, they don't have the capability. Somehow that's going to make them somehow be able to behave the way that is ideal in the situation. And that's not it.
My son is playing a game right now on his computer where he's a thief and the cops are after him. So I'm so excited about this new app, Give As We Grow, where instead of being the quote unquote bad guys, kids are practicing giving back.
That is so cool, Joanne. I really wish that there was something like this when my kids were younger that got them excited about giving back to others and helped them build a better understanding of what it really means to volunteer.
Give As We Grow is the first of its kind free educational mobile app for children ages 8 to 11 that teaches kids via fun, service-focused minigame quests to tap into their unique talents and interests to help others.
And did you know that studies show that there is a biological connection between generosity and happiness, and that volunteering improves people's physical and mental health? I mean, kids who volunteer typically do better in school and are less likely to engage in risky behaviors. And that is something that I think we all want for our kids.
Ready to spark a new movement in generosity? Find and download Give As We Grow for free in the App Store for Android and iOS. And for resources for the whole family, visit giveaswegrow.org.
Hey, all, Bree here, and I wanted to share one of my favorite gifts to give during the holiday season, a Storyworth book. It is the most amazing gift ever. Storyworth is an online service that lets you create a special and unique gift of someone's story. I've given Storyworth books to both of my parents, and it has been their favorite gift, hands down. And did I mention it is so easy? Storyworth emailed my parents questions every week that I handpicked from their massive list of questions that they have. All my parents had to do was open their email and answer them. That easy. I asked my dad questions like, did you have any rules that you set for yourself as a parent, which you immediately broke? And he did. I even asked both of my parents, are you more like your mom or your dad? And they shared a lot of really amazing qualities that I didn't know about my grandparents at the time. Then at the end of the year, Storyworth compiles all of their answers, puts them into this gorgeous book that covers everything. My parents love showing us their books, and I personally love getting a chance to read them. With Storyworth, I am giving those I love a thoughtful and personal gift from the heart that preserves their memories and stories for years to come. Go to storyworth.com/NGM and save $10 on your first purchase. That's storyworth.com/NGM to save $10 on your first purchase.
Yes. And, two things I want to point out here. One is that if you weren't doing that, if you weren't making a child feel bad for the developmental mistakes that they were making, and that's what's happening, their brain is still in the beginning stages of developing. If you weren't making a child feel bad and being harsh towards them when they messed up, then you were looked at as neglectful.
Yeah.
Right. And so this gets passed down to us as opposed to seeing it as maybe there's a skill that they don't have yet. Maybe they're struggling. They're not trying. It's the whole thing of they're not trying to give us a hard time, that they're having a hard time. Mm-hmm. They're having a hard time, regulating their bodies so that they can, not touch that thing that you don't want them to touch, or not move. And it's because their bodies it's just where they're at in their development. And we don't make a lot of space as adults for kids to be kids. And a lot of times our world isn't set up that way to allow kids to be kids. And so sometimes this puts us in as a parent or even as a teacher, it puts us in a difficult position to try to force a kid or punish a kid or threaten a kid out of being a kid. And instead of seeing them and making space for them to be a kid, to do a developmentally appropriate things, and teaching them skills to improve and get better and better and better at meeting our, quite honestly, often developmentally inappropriate expectations.
Yeah, I think you just said it so impactfully, because it's like we're trying to fit a kid into a non-kid world.
Yeah.
And because of that, there's just so much fear that goes on with us as a parent that we're not doing our job well if our kids aren't really adhering to a set of behaviors that we think they should. Like, I have seen parents chase after kids who are like 4 years old and being like, oh my gosh, don't do that. You're going to get hurt. Come over here. Take your hands off that plate. Like, just being so consumed with their kids possibly doing something quote unquote wrong in the moment, that the kid isn't being allowed to be,
Well, and it's hard because a lot of times their heart, like the intention of the adult that's with them, right? Yeah. Like, they're trying to keep their child safe. Maybe they, and you've talked about this earlier, like maybe they have too much anxiety themselves. That makes them constantly worried that their child's going to hurt themselves. Maybe they had very strict parents that have made very point clear that, if your child doesn't do exactly this, and this, and they're completely misbehaving and you're a terrible parent, and they just want love and acceptance. But like, it's really hard, right? Because when you see that coming from their intention is in a good place, but it's having the exact opposite reaction of what they're wanting, an impact.
And how are you supposed to know what else to do in that moment if you haven't had that example, right? All the example that we had is the constant no, stop, don't, strict, don't make me, kind of language. So that is what we've been conditioned with, and it's in our body. And, there's a phrase that, like, I went to speak and out came my mother's mouth, right? It's just saying, like, speaking to the, like I went to say something, I went to correct my child, and I found myself saying the same thing that was said to
Yep.
me as a child growing up. And like, where did that come from? Like, who am I? Like, I said I wasn't going to be like this, but here I am.
Yeah.
Comes
Right.
out
And so,
habitually.
you know,
Yeah.
I try to do, that's a lot of the work I do on social media, because even in my journey, like, again, like, I had to figure out what else to do, what else to say other than no, stop, don't touch that. Right. I had to figure out, like, that saying no, stop, don't is working against their brain, because I'm still putting on the focus on the thing that I don't want them to do. And instead, I need to be able to, one, think about what I want them to do instead, which can be hard enough as it is, and then be able to instruct them what to do and tell them what to do instead of what not to do. I need to think about where this, child is at developmentally, and know this child in front of me, and not just say, oh, a 2-year-old should be able to do this, a 3-year-old should be able to do this, 4-year-old should be able to do this. No, each child is developmentally in different places. And so I have to be able to know the child, and that's part of the relationship building, not just connection, but also knowing the child. I also need to know, like, what their attention span is going to be for certain things, certain activities. So I can kind of already just have that expectation in my mind. So I'm not surprised when they can't sit still and not touch anything for 20 minutes, because that's an unrealistic expectation for a toddler.
Yeah.
It's all these things that you have to learn. And then it's like, yeah, okay, I know better, but then I have to practice doing better. And also, too, and that's just with the child, right? I didn't even talk about, and that's just, strategies to do with the child. I didn't even talk about the beginning part of, how do I self-regulate enough to even remember to do those things?
Right.
How do I even learn to pause, to self-regulate, to breathe, to say some helpful mantras to combat those unhelpful, sometimes harmful messages that are running through my brain body? How do I do all those
And give
things?
yourself the grace, right? And like you said that earlier, give yourself the grace that it's not supposed to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
It is unrealistic expectations to think at all times I'm going to be calm, I'm going to be zen, I'm going to be able to keep my emotions in check, and I'm never going to yell. I'm never going to lose my cool.
Because that doesn't happen.
Saying like telling yourself, like, it's okay that I yell at my kid every 5 minutes because I didn't mean to. It's just saying that give yourself some grace. We're all it's a practice.
And I want to also add some more to those parents who are making mistakes out there. We're all trying our best, right? Children are trying their best with the skills, knowledge, and resources they have access to in the moment. And you are trying your best as a parent with the skills, knowledge, and resources you have access to in that moment. And one, there's no such thing as a perfect parent.
Mm-hmm.
Two, I talk to a lot of people, all the people who've written the book on parenting, right? And not a single one of them has said, like, oh, I got so good that I was at the point, like, I don't make mistakes anymore, right? Like, I finally have gotten on my 5th book. I finally got to the point where I was the perfect parent.
Yeah.
No, what they say
No.
is, and what I say too, is that really at the heights that if you're looking for a place, a mountaintop of perfect parenting, I will replace that perfect parenting with the just awareness and consciousness of it, of being able to, the real power is being able to, in those moments where you're threatening or the yelling or the shaming or doing the thing that you're kind of aware is not helpful and maybe even potentially harmful, the thing that you said you didn't want to do, you've committed to not doing, of becoming aware of that in the moment as you're doing it and being able to kind of check yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That is like really the mountaintop where, like, okay, like, this is where you've made it. They're still improving and they're still learning. And I want to add number 3. I want to add to that is that those mistakes are an essential part of the learning process. Mistakes are an essential part of the learning process. I'm going to say it one more time because it's so important. Mistakes are an essential part of the learning process for you, for your child.
We should say it with you. Mistakes are an essential part of the learning process.
Mistakes.
Oh, no.
Mistakes are an essential part of the learning process. Mistakes are
Right.
mistakes are opportunities to learn all the time.
Yes.
Yes.
So when you're making those mistakes, instead of seeing it as a woe is me, I'm such a bad parent, try to see that as a gift for everyone to learn here. That's an opportunity for you to learn here. I'm a conscious discipline practitioner. And so we have a phrase in the conscious discipline, our oops stands for our opportunity to problem solve. And when we make an oops, that's a gift not only for us to learn, but also for children to learn how to make mistakes. And as children, that is probably the most valuable lesson to learn because they're going to be making mistakes their entire life. And especially as children, because they're so new to the world and so new to everything. And because mistakes are an essential part of the learning process, and they're learning about everything in the world, so they're going to be making mistakes all over the place. That's probably one of the most valuable things that you can teach them as a parent is how to make mistakes and how to repair relationships afterwards, how to repair, how to come back from your mistakes. And if we are trying to pretend to be the perfect parent, like a lot of our parents used to pretend to be, they have a really hard time apologizing, wouldn't apologize because we wouldn't listen to them because we would think that they made mistakes.
It's
on
totally
the opposite,
true.
those mistakes and showing children how to make mistakes, that is a valuable lesson to learn, even more valuable than you doing the quote unquote right thing the first time.
Yeah, it is so valuable. And I think it's a really good protector too against perfectionism, just seeing other people make mistakes and that it's okay and that you can recover. And you've given us so much to think about. I love the mind shifts as well that you've given us to think about and the little changes in behavior. What are you excited about that's coming up in your own life?
Oh man, there's so much. I'm living a busy life right now. I'm write my book and all of the nuance and strategies and really mapping out how to guide children in a healthy way and kind of heal from some of the harm that we have conditioned in our bodies. So I'm excited about that. And I kind of said I wasn't going to do like a course. I wanted to write a book for us first, but I think my mind is starting to change in that. And I am going to be coming out with an online course at some point. So those are some things that I'm excited about.
That all sounds amazing. It all sounds amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It has been a pleasure talking to you, Mr. Chazz. And this is going to be so helpful to so many parents.
Thank you for having me on. There's so much more I wish I could say on the No Guilt Mom podcast.
Yes. Oh, then I think we're just going to have you back again. Yes.
I guess you're going to have to do that.
Well, we definitely look forward to your course and your book, and we're excited to talk to you again sometime soon. So we'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye.
That was so much fun talking to him. And I have to admit, one of the coolest things about us having a podcast, Bree, is like, I think I've mentioned this before. We just get to reach out to people and meet them, people that we admire and people like we really want to talk to. And hey, do you want to come be on the podcast? Versus like
people that normally you would not be able to talk to.
Yeah, people you would normally not be able to
connect with. We'll say connect with. When I say not be able to talk to, it sounds a little stalkerish. So people you wouldn't normally be able to connect with. We'll say that.
Yeah. It like makes it the best job in the world. You get all these fascinating people. And it's also kind of an interesting job because we both record from our own homes. And you had a very interesting situation during this interview.
My day was like crazy. So I love my husband beyond belief, and the fact that he tries everything 100%. We've recently got a new sink in our kitchen, And when I say recently, it was actually a little over a month ago.
I feel this has been like the sink of drama. Like there's been something going on with this all the time.
Right? So like we got the sink put in and we had to call a granite guy. And then once it was done, he was like, okay, now you just need to call a plumber to hook it up or you can just do it yourself. And the granite guy convinced my husband he could do it himself. I love you, Miguel. But I haven't had working drinking water in like 6 weeks.
It's a long time, especially in Arizona where it's so dry here and we need our drinking water.
Right? Like, and I'm not saying like we didn't have water. Like the sink was working. We have an RO system and I missed my drinking water and it was like such a pain. And like we had like no ice in the fridge. First world problems, right? Just such an issue. So it took us a while, but I finally was able to get a hold of our water system people, scheduled an appointment, but they're very busy. So it took them like 2.5 weeks to get out here. I have a huge party this weekend, my annual sweater party. And so I'm like, I need to have water. I need to have ice by then. So, and of course the guy like calls me the day before and is like, yeah, I'll be there between 9:30 and 10:30. Ask me what time our interview was. 9:30.
It's like 9:30.
So like, yeah. So I told Joanne, like during this whole thing, I was like, okay, I know. Hopefully he won't show up at the beginning. And he didn't, but he showed up like 3/4 of the way through. And you'll see me in the video just like snapping under my arm, like trying to get my dog to stop barking. And I'm like, I gotta go. There's a guy in my kitchen that has no idea what to do. He's just looking at a leaky faucet going, huh? So yeah.
It's like all these scheduling things. Trying to balance real lives with podcast life. It's always a good time. Well, we had a phenomenal time with Mr. Chazz, and we look forward to everything that he is putting out there.
Yes, we have more collaborations coming up with him too.
We do. Look out for those.
Yeah, there you will see more stuff with No Guilt Mom and Mr. Chazz because we are right on the same wavelength.
Yes. So remember, the best mom is a happy mom. Take care of you, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks for stopping by. Are you looking for something to listen to with your whole family? Then check out 6 Minutes, produced and created by Gen Z Media. With over 200 twisty, cliffhanger-filled episodes, 6 Minutes tells the story of 11-year-old Holiday who is pulled from the icy waters with no memory of who she is or where she came from.
3 years ago, Brinley Pasternak helped the Anders family uncover the truth about Holiday's past. Now she'll need them to help her find the truth about hers. In 6 Minutes Out of Time, the long-awaited sequel, Cyrus Anders is found unconscious near the mysterious Elixir Academy in Florida, and Brinley learns the school may have a shocking connection to her missing mother.
Dive in now and get the most downloaded family audio adventure in history. Follow 6 Minutes wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen early and ad-free with the GZM family subscription.